Hey, this is Donovan for Donovan Watches Movies. So Disney's releasing a movie on Friday. It's a little movie you may have heard of called Beauty and the Beast. This film is a live-action adaptation of the Broadway musical that is in turn an adaptation of the 1991 film, which became the first animated film to get a Best Picture nomination at the Academy Awards. And even ignoring all of the awards pedigree attached, Beauty and the Beast is simply one of Disney's most beloved and well-known properties. So of course it got a live-action adaptation. But of the live-action Disney reboots, this also happens to be the first musical. It's also the first live-action adaptation to be based on one of the properties from the Disney Renaissance. The Disney Renaissance is used to describe Disney's prowess from 1989 to 1999. It began with The Little Mermaid and ended with Tarzan. And Beauty and the Beast is generally considered one of the best in that group. More people think The Lion King is the best of the Disney Renaissance, but I'm sticking with Beauty and the Beast on this one. So all this to say, the new live-action adaptation has a lot to live up to. And while I won't be able to see that movie until Friday, the soundtrack for it is out. And I have some thoughts. Although it is unfair to judge a film before actually, watching it, this is a musical, so the soundtrack will give us some clues as to whether or not this film has the potential, at least, to live up to its predecessor. The short answer is that it doesn't. For this review, I'm basically just looking at the vocal numbers as opposed to the orchestrations from Alan Menken. So let's get on with it. The first real vocal track here is an aria called Aria, performed by Audra McDonald. This aria is a lot of fun. I'm not convinced that she just didn't walk into a recording booth and then just, open her mouth and then awesome sounds came out and then there was some kind of arrangement built around that. Now let's move to Belle. Yeah. Look, I like Emma Watson. From an actorly standpoint, it makes sense to cast her as Belle. But from a singing standpoint, her voice just isn't there. And she is auto-tuned to high heaven here. Sadly, that's not the last we'll hear of autotune on the soundtrack. Luke Evans makes a really grand entrance as Gaston, and Josh Gad is yucking it up as LeFou. I have a feeling they'll both end up being the best things about the movie from an actorly standpoint. Now, listening to this rendition of Belle, They
ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
I honestly cringed. The number itself is such a powerful number, especially in the 1991 animated film. It sets up so much context for the story at hand, why Belle feels the way she does, how the society around her treats her, how she doesn't feel like she belongs, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it does the same thing here too, but it really needs a strong delivery. And again, Watson's vocals are just not there for it. Next up is How Does a Moment Last Forever, performed by Kevin Kline. It's one of the new songs written for the film, probably just to get Alan Menken another Oscar nomination. This song is fine. Again, I haven't seen the movie, but just listening to it in the soundtrack, it sounds a little bit like filler. But we do hear the song again later in a somewhat different context that works a little bit better. Okay, actually a lot better. Then there is the reprise of Belle. As it is a reprise, this returns to the big grand opening number in a way that feels smaller yet bigger at the same time, at least in the original film. Again, the vocal performance just is not there. So this track I'm not a huge fan of. I guess I should mention at this point that Belle and its reprise, as they appear in the original 1991 film, are among my favorite movie songs, ever. So I really don't like what they did with them here. Then we have the song Gaston. Luke Evans and Josh Gad do the heavy lifting here, and it's honestly a lot of fun. They both have strong vocal presences on this track. There is some auto-tune here that feels a little unnecessary, but it's not enough to distract from the track overall. Then there's Be Our Guest, in which Lumiere invites Belle to eat, basically. The number never really added a whole lot to the story, other than the line about 10 years, which fueled some fan theories. But it is a memorable, fun song that gives some of the side characters a moment to shine. It feels a lot bigger here than it did in the original film, but I feel like it was plenty big in the original film at the same time. Next up is the second of 3 original songs in the film, titled Days in the Sun. On this track, Mrs. Potts and the like reminisce on how they felt when they were humans and how they wish they could have that back. I guess it's the closest thing this movie will have to Human Again, a song that was cut from the original film that focuses on Lumiere and the other characters wanting to be, well, human again. Next up is Something There. This lovely and, as far as I'm concerned, underappreciated gem from the original film accounts for Belle and the Beast falling in love with each other. And again, the vocal presence from Watson just isn't there for this track. Dan Stevens, who plays the Beast, the vocal work is it's fine. It just does not have the same power as the original track from the 1991 film. But now we're getting to some of the good stuff on this soundtrack. Next up is Emma Watson's reprise of How Does a Moment Last Forever. Now, all throughout this review of the soundtrack, I've been mentioning that Watson doesn't really have the chops to pull off a lot of these songs. But her performance on this reprise is absolutely enchanting. There's still some auto-tune there, but it's nowhere near as much as before, and it feels like we're actually getting a strong glimpse at Watson's voice. And it's not a bad voice at all. No, really. For as much as I've said about her in the soundtrack review, I don't think she's necessarily a bad singer. I sort of wish there were a demo take of this reprise just so we could hear her actual voice. Here, Belle reflects on her childhood, but at the same time, has to realize that she's no longer a child. Then there is Emma Thompson's rendition of the title song, Beauty and the Beast. It sounds like she's really trying to sound like Angela Lansbury, who of course voiced Mrs. Potts in the original film. And it doesn't quite work. Next up is Evermore by Dan Stevens. The essential gist of this song is the Beast realizing his love for Belle. It's easily the track here with the most unfulfilled potential. There's a solid arrangement, but it never really builds the way that I would have preferred it to. And Stevens' vocal presence here is solid. But while it is a solid vocal, it also feels somewhat restrained. I'm thinking one of 2 things happened here. Either there was too much auto-tune and it drowns it out so we don't hear anything dynamic, or Stevens pulled himself back and didn't really want to go for it. And I guess this is the problem I have with his vocals. He's putting on a thick voice to interpret the Beast, but there's nothing jagged there. There's nothing that feels like there's an edge to it. And of course, people who grew up with the original film in 1991 are going to compare it to that, perhaps unfairly. But even so, this character is a beast. I mean, that's his name. You think there would be some sort of edge in the vocal performance. And again, going back to the 1991 film, Robbie Benson delivered a great vocal performance as the Beast, even when singing songs and staying on key and absolutely nailing it. He also threw in some rough patches, and it made the track stand out. So long story short, I feel like the arrangement here never builds, and I feel like Stevens' performance on the track, for maybe 1 or more reasons, is restrained. What I think would have really worked here is a more dynamic roller coaster of an arrangement and an unrestrained, if maybe a little bit off, performance from Stevens. We're in the home stretch, y'all. It's time for the mob song. Of the songs here that are remade from the 1991 film, this is the only one that I feel comes close to matching or even possibly improving on the original. Evan's vocal performance here is dynamic. There's build, there's range, there's subtext. And the chorus here feels like I think a chorus should. It captures the essence of the song. It also feels disparate and connected at the same time. And I have no idea if there's been any confirmation on this, but it also seems like Angela Lansbury may be the voice of one of the townspeople. And now we come to the finale on the soundtrack. the reprise of Beauty and the Beast. The main vocalists here are McDonald and Thompson. McDonald does the heavy lifting with this finale and really brings it home for the conclusion in the track. Thompson gets a nice little line, it sounds okay. Then we have 3 tracks that won't be featured in the body of the film itself. The first is Celine Dion's take on How Does a Moment Last Forever. Her voice here is absolutely golden, as you would expect. The track itself feels a little bit like Learn to Be Lonely, the end credits tune from Joel Schumacher's adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. I feel weird saying it, but I like Watson's rendition of this more. Not that she's an objectively better singer than Dion, but I just like its connection to the story more. Then we have Ariana Grande and John Legend tackling the title track. The duet itself is faultless from a vocal standpoint. The arrangement is... I don't know how I feel about it. It's growing on me, I guess. Lastly, there is Josh Groban's take on Evermore. The arrangement here doesn't captivate me as much as the arrangement on the track used in the film. But Groban's voice on this track, oh my god. If there's ever a Broadway revival of Beauty and the Beast and they decide to include Evermore, I would absolutely love for Groban to take this role on the stage. His vocals here are smooth, which, again, contrasts with the Beast, but he's not performing this song as the character, so I will give him that. So it's probably not difficult to tell that I have a very mixed response to this soundtrack. There are some moments here that made me absolutely cringe, don't get me wrong. But the album does feature a couple of really great standout tracks as well. So this soundtrack is a mixed bag. And again, going back to the fact that this is a musical, I'm thinking the movie probably will be too. So have you had a chance to listen to the soundtrack yet? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and click like if you like this video, and of course subscribe if you would like to see more of my videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch up with y'all later. Bye!